Morning. We'll be starting soon. Florida, Minneapolis. It's snowing. Wow, already. Colorado, Ohio, Charlotte, North Carolina, Los Angeles, Columbus, Queens, Philadelphia, Buenos Dias, Toronto, Chicago in the house, Portland, Seattle, Washington, Bronx, Wisconsin, Lancaster, PA, Rhode Island, Atlanta. Again, a lot of y'all out here from Atlanta. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Thank you guys for joining us. Or good afternoon now, it's now noon. Or depending on where you are. Thank you for joining us this morning for the Art of Hospital Midwifery. North Florida, Chicago, ATL. My name is F.A. Osarin. I am the founder of Doula Chronicles, and welcome to Reproductive Futurism. So Reproductive Futurism is a virtual gathering in honor of the work of Lorretta and Octavia Butler have laid out for us to follow in their footsteps on dreaming and creating what a better future around pregnancy and birth can look like. As birth workers, we are on the front lines of this maternal health crisis. We witness near misses, mistreatment from healthcare staff, obstetric violence. Grieving and mourning is a part of our work, but so is creating a new where it didn't exist before. This virtual gathering will be a space for you to share with your comrades on what the future can look like. As said by one of our elders and our favorite Black midwife, Lodz Joseph, we are in the business of saving lives. Today, we are met with Ebony, Ayana, Lodz, and Stephanie, all hospital midwives in the area. If you look in the chat section, you will see their bios will be posted there. So we'll get, also before I get started, all questions put in the Q&A box and all comments and like interactions with the panelists to be in the chat box so I can able to make sure that your questions get answered. So to start off first, well, I want to start off with, how are you? How are you doing today? How are you feeling? How's your body? How's your heart? You got to say it back.
Rising. Thank you so much for having me. It is beautiful. It's a lovely fall day here in Alabama. I don't know about the rest of y'all, but it is beautiful.
We're experiencing a little bit of winter coming our way. Mm-hmm. So I start off the chat with, why hospital midwifery?
Can I go?
Yeah, everyone can jump in.
So I feel like this is a conversation that has always been a hard one to have all the many years of me being a midwife, just because a lot of people identify midwifery as home, and out of hospital birth only, and also what that quote unquote looks like. And I used to crack jokes all the time. I used to be like, well, I wasn't part of that crew. I eat bacon. I don't have a comedic name. I don't wear patchouli. But I'm still a damn midwife. And so hospital birth for me was always what I was striving for, because I knew and learned early on that's where the folks are that really need us are. The folks that have some, awareness, education, and understand how they want to prioritize this transition in their life. They were considering out of hospital, they were figuring it out and having it. but it's the ones who were really suffering and really traumatized from their experiences that don't know any other way, haven't seen any other way, were in the hospital, and that's who I wanted to touch. And this conversation really started all the way back from when I decided to become a midwife. I had plenty of people that were trying to tell me to be, that I should just be a CPM, and like CPMs are dope. And matter of fact, we should align way more than we do. But I knew I wanted to get those other folks who wouldn't know this, who wouldn't know that life, and be impactful there.
I definitely, I had shame about going into the hospital system, or just like kind of what Ebony was saying. I had like a really hard time in the beginning, feeling like I wasn't doing enough for my community because I should be out there doing the work, not even fully like really understanding like the work has to be done in the system too, to break it down. And so it was difficult. And it was a doula who looked at me dead in the eye and was like, we need you in the system because that's where our people are going. And so that's part of the why, even though there can be a lot of toxicity there. It's a place that needs a lot of work. We know this. But our people are going there because that's what they can do, you know? So.
Ayana, are you frozen? Or am I frozen?
I see everybody good and clear.
Yeah.
No one's frozen.
Oh,
Okay, you're good.
Yeah.
Okay, I was gonna say hi. My name's Lodz, F-A. It's Lodz, like
Loads. My apologies.
Fine. For me, hospital birth, you know, I think it's because my family is from Haiti, and I grew up knowing people could have birth at home, and that was safe. I also knew that in Haiti, people really were fighting for hospitals to come into their area because there were people who died at home. I'm not saying that home birth or birth centers aren't safe. There aren't that many birth centers in Haiti, so I didn't grow up with that, but I knew it was safe. I also knew when you needed a hospital, it was nice for people to have access to that. And so when it was time for me to become a midwife, I also knew I enjoyed working with people who were higher acuity that only would get MD, DO care. And the setting I'm in, I first assist with docs. So I get to see patients that are like previous C-sections ×6 who have a lot of other complications. Sometimes it is unsafe for me to be in this setting, to be honest. But those patients are like, it's nice. I got to see a midwife and a doctor, and that was not available to them before. And I do think in some rural areas, the landscape looks different for midwifery. So for me, I knew when I was coming out of school, I was a Nurse Corps recipient, had loan repayment. It was between Alaska and Georgia. There was like no doubt in my mind. I wanted to work with people who had the highest maternal mortality rates, and I wanted to be of use. Alaska is just because it was overwhelmingly beautiful. The South is because there are Black people here. That's the bottom line. So yeah.
How do you handle, well, I'll read the question directly. There's in the Q&A box, I know there is a higher need for midwifery care in the MIC, Medical Industrial Complex, but I want to protect my heart and soul. I'm leaning towards birth outside the hospital, but still feel a calling to help people who birth in the MIC. How would you suggest how to balance that? So I guess, how are you balancing working in a space where midwifery is a challenge that is not welcomed organically?
I'll go ahead and answer that because I feel like I'm in a somewhat of a unique position, having recently left hospital midwifery, which I also want to say I appreciate. You know, just even the name of this, which is the art of hospital midwifery, because it is truly an art. and you're in a unique position. Although we do know innately the system is damaged, and it is damaging, particularly to Black and brown bodies. It is a art that if you are able to curate your art in a specific type of way, you can be of benefit to so many people. And so I think going into whatever space it is that you're going to be offering midwifery care, you need to just understand the system that you're going into, understand your resources, understand, going into it blindly is a terrible idea. It's a terrible idea. I went into it a little blindly into the hospital space because I only had the perspective from a labor and delivery nurse and from what I saw as midwives providing that type of care. But there's a bunch of other pieces of a system that is a little damaged. So I feel like if you're able to expose yourself to, to what you're actually getting into, you're going to be of benefit to people. You can't walk into this with blinders, certainly. And I think you are doing your due diligence right now by just even attending. So that's like a piece of what I'm saying, but protecting your heart is certainly of utmost importance.
Hospital comes with bureaucracy. That's a huge piece of it. It really sucks. It's terrible. And depending on what level or phase that you're in, I definitely, as a nurse, saw a lot of things I did not agree with that felt kind of stuck. Because at the time, like I was a nurse, and even as a newer midwife, especially when I was practicing in a group with physicians, not in leadership, I definitely didn't always feel like I could acknowledge. And so that was also a big piece of my motivation to get to a point where I could have some say so I could address things. But, it's still very, very much so needed for us to be there. And also understanding that it's not everybody's cup of tea, it's not everybody's lane, but if it can be, we need you to also be there. Things that are really helpful for me is really creating spaces for me to fellowship with other Black midwives who are on the scene caring for Black women. And so even before I created my team, I had other folks, and then I've mentored a lot. But creating a space for us to be open and raw and honest. Like I always kind of say, I'll get frustrated sometimes with something going on with somebody that we're caring for. And, I might crack a joke, but at the end of the day, like it's all good because I love her. That's the difference. I really love these women that I'm caring for. So even though I get frustrated and I'm mad, like, nah, I'm still going to be 155%, million% for her and what's needed. But having the opportunity to have space and also really paying attention to creating cohesion in your team and who you're working with allows us to like process and be like, yo, I left that office visit feeling like trash.
Yeah, so you have to be intentional.
Very.
I think of what album was that of Solange? I can't. One of the songs to say and do nothing without intention on the album. The second album, yes, he's like, do nothing without intention. Do nothing without intention. As he's like saying in a mantra, and I really took that in the midwifery practice, but especially as a birth worker. And not getting caught in, autopilot mode of just like functioning as a little robot zombie after a while and forgetting or letting the bureaucracy start to influence how your behavior is going. Like, how do you make sure you don't step inside that boundary? How do you make sure you stay authentic so you are able to provide the care that you need?
Hey, it's Lodz. If it's okay, I'd like to answer that one. And I think, Ebony has heard me talk about my setting. Ayana has heard me talk about my setting. Previous mentors, people in my life have heard me talk about this setting I'm in. One, it is hard being the one and only. Like, there's pressure. There's an incredible weight. I feel completely responsible to these group of birthing people that come in our doors, and the staff I work with, particularly the people we're set up with people one-on-one, they're like, the bar is higher for you. Like, it's just different. And I expect that because that's what I'm coming with. You know, that's the minimum when you're working with loads. You know, our patients do not deserve sea-level care. Our rooms have to be clean, like everything, just the way I would want it. Wherever I go is what I am giving to my patients. So I want to know about their families. I want to know everything. You know, it's not these like 15, 10-minute visits, but that comes with a cost. It comes with, you know, I'm at a practice where I work. I just like went off last week, and I am sometimes scheduled for 123 hours a week. You know, like that is where I work. And, you know, because it is a rural setting, the midwives do 72-hour shifts. There is no shift work. We don't have enough midwives. We can't get enough midwives. And now we're—
How do you do 72-hour shifts? How is that even?
Yeah, it's so funny because now when I look for like there are opportunities for shift work, I'm like, girl, what? Wow, that's gonna be great.
I'm like, a lot of midwives are like, yep, I just got off my 48-hour call. And I'm like, you're wilding.
I'm like, 72 hours. I mean, I hate to say it. I mean, things are a little different for me now. You know, I'm a little bit more tired, but for the most part, it's just, I just separate. Like, we're allowed to take call at home. I live 10 minutes from the hospital, so I don't have to stay there. So that was the cost. You can live further, or you'd have to stay in the hospital like some of my colleagues. But to answer your question, I think it's really, like Stephanie said, being intentional. Mm-hmm. You don't know what you don't know as a new midwife. So my mentors who, at where I went to school, which has complications, you know, one of those midwifery directors took an interest in me and was like, Lodz, you don't know what you don't know. It's not because you can't do it. This is not an appropriate job for a new grad. 3 years in, I'm like, shoot, that is not an appropriate job for a new grad. Like, you know, I like, this rich lady wasn't like hating. She was just like, I know you want to work with Black women.
I got so much like, advice in school. And I was like, yeah, I hear you. And then you get there.
So, you know, you don't know what you don't know. You don't know, like, wow, it is totally inappropriate for me to be managing this amount of patients. I'm jumping from births to births. I can't look at that strip because really you're in a delivery. You're trying to be as focused and attentive. And then there's like a horrible tracing in another room. And the person's like, can I call the attending? And you're like, no, we got it under control. Not, yo, it's a category 3. It's about to be on and popping. Like, we need to be in the back. Oh, okay. So I think it is so important. Again, intention, definitely knowing what you're getting into. And 3, surround yourself with positive people. Surround yourself with the activities you like. And I don't think people understand that. Like, Corona has shown me I love being a hiker. Like, wherever I go next, I look and I'm like, how far are hiking trails? That quality of life, I was like, I just want to be a midwife. I just want to do a good job. You'll do that. You'll get that. I promise you, all those foundation and nuance will come to you. But if you aren't looking out for you, like when you do your pros and cons list on a job, you will then eventually be on that con list. The work will become too heavy. And I think that is sometimes how we lose Black midwives within the first year of 5 years of practice.
Can I add on to that?
Go ahead.
So the first year of midwifery, my first year and a half, I was a zombie. I would come home, I sat on the couch after like a 12 or 24-hour shift, even sometimes my clinic day, and I was just there. Like, that's it. And it's a huge role change from, again, this is a CNM route, from going from a registered nurse in labor and delivery to a care provider who is now caring for multiple patients and managing all the things that they're going through, making sure that, you know, if they have a complication, they're getting referrals, they're getting the lab work, they're getting the follow-up that they need, that they're not getting lost through the cracks. This is a huge teaching hospital with over 400 births a month. It wasn't uncommon for me to do 5 and 6 deliveries in a 12-hour shift. That's like a norm. So you're hopping from room to room. Like, I had nothing left because I was giving my job my all, because midwifery meant everything to me. And so I think it's, there are some people who can go home and separate themselves from their job. And I think we have to have a level of that, but at the same time, knowing the majority of who we are as Black women, Black people. And just like Ebony said, like, I love these patients. Like, it's really hard to separate yourself sometimes. But so not only was I zombie, gained 50 pounds within the first year, because all I was doing was going to work. I didn't really know how to balance everything else. I was still exercising, but at the level of acuity of our hospital, like, I would eat once a day because I'm managing the rest of everything else. Mm-hmm. So it's important for you to build your routine before you get in there, as much as you can, or have a solid foundation going in. I also like what the other panelists are saying too, is like, they don't, it depends on where you go to school and what is available to you. But a lot of times, hospital is a main focus when you're in a certified nurse midwifery program. You may have some that, and I'm speaking from my experience, we didn't have a whole lot of home birth experience. There was a sprinkling of times where we could have done birth centers, but it was like dependent on your schedule, which some of us weren't able to get to those births. And a lot of the midwives who were going to be at those deliveries wanted us to have seen the patient before, that kind of thing. So there's like this imbalance. So I really stress to those, like, it's wonderful to be a midwife, but you need to know what you're doing before you go in there. Like, you have to understand there is a cost, and protecting your energy is huge. Like, at this point in time, I don't have reservation. I don't have, you know, the reserves, just like a baby who's category 2, like, I don't have the reserves left over for much else. And I know I'm at my breaking point. And guess what? Ayanna has to take time to care for herself. Otherwise, it's going to be a hot mess. So recognizing those kind of things it's super important. So, yeah, so I just want you all to realize it's not just this like midwifery. And I mean, it's great, but we also have to think about how it impacts us and what it means to ourselves and our families in the long run.
It goes into like what I've been thinking on. We talk a lot about medical racism for birthing people. What about the racism towards Black midwifery? Or the racism that you're experiencing from staff, from your patients, from the system, all of it?
I see, God, there's so much. This could be a whole discussion. So when we talk about like the system, right? What it is, because even though, you know, we don't like to always acknowledge that medicine is hierarchy. So even when it's now I'm the provider, sometimes the issues I would have with nurses not really wanting to take orders from a Black woman, being a Black woman in leadership, you know, I can't tell you the accusations I've endured, you know, because I had to say to people, listen, my hands are speaking loud, it's cultural. This is who we are. Doesn't mean I'm gonna fight you. Doesn't mean I'm gonna hit you, but like just the accusations from even the internalized racism. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm so proud to be in this room with all these Black folks, and I'm like hype. I'm like, girl, I'm about to take such good bomb ass care of you. And her mama's like, so when is the doctor coming? I'm like, he's not. It's me. You know, the level of like microaggressions, you know, from other colleagues, and midwifery is always having like defend, you know, and I just want to speak back upon the whole, like, midwifery is very glamorized. It's very like, oh, it's so beautiful and like spiritual and everybody's gonna like hold hands and the baby's, no, girl, this shit is no joke. When you have a good shoulder dystocia, a hemorrhage, you about to lose somebody. You know, I got some wisdom grains up here wisdom strands here, honey,
I
from
didn't get grades until midwifery
yeah,
school.
from birth, but also like just like for real the weight gain. So I like not eating, not drinking, because that's the other real thing, dehydration, not going to the bathroom like you're supposed to, just that like pressure and that stress.
That was a big thing. Counselor kept telling us, go pee. And we used to be like, why are you always telling us to go pee?
Yeah. It's like you embody that
TIs
stress.
and the stress.
You embody it. And so every year I was a midwife, I kept gaining weight. Like, you know, you can't help it. Like, it doesn't matter what you do, but it's a lot. It's absolutely, the racism is really thick. And then just going back one more piece, the training piece, right? So not acknowledging how deep it is into our systems. Like, I was trained, don't let her leave here without depot. Who the fuck am I? Like, she don't need, I curse, I'm sorry. But like, why does she have to leave here with birth control? Like, it's ingrained in our training. You know, we gotta make sure that they have contraception, you know, like trying to also battle and deal with that is also another layer.
I just want to say for the matter of statistics and facts, we do know that labor and birth for Black women specifically in the hospital has adverse outcomes of way higher proportions when compared to our white counterparts. We already know that. So anyone who thinks that in an institution, in a provider capability, you're able to segue that racism, you're out of your mind. You're out of your mind. You cannot segue it. You're able to identify it in these spaces. You're able to identify it by even a passing by of somebody who just says a word, because we're around it so much. We can become the microaggressions. We could feel every little bit of them. Even when the general population is walking around, we could all be in the same room having the same conversation, but because they're not aware of the levels of microaggressions, nobody is aware that these are the things that are kind of going on in the source. You could all be in the same room having the same conversation, but you'll be the one to pick up on it. So we have to be aware, but I also know that for the majority of us who are going to hospitals to have labor and birth, and even though it's a typically, historically, and statistically unsafe for Black bodies, I don't want y'all to think that there are not ways to segue the system. You just have to know what these are and ways, the pitfalls and the education, same way as if you're a provider. You can't go in there and just, not realize that this institution wasn't built for you, So I don't say that to discourage people. We know what the numbers say, and we know how providers fare in those institutions. So it's just educating yourself about the ways in which these systems work so that you can safely be in those environments, whether you're having a baby there or whether you're working there. It's the same level of, the way the institutions work. I just wanted to touch briefly too on, there was a little piece of that question about, didn't you ask about other providers, racism towards you? But I just wanted to sprinkle in here real quick. Do not be alarmed for other midwife providers or with Black female providers specifically, right? Do not be alarmed or surprised when people are existing in this system and have become complacent, and you expect them to be your allies because they're in a Black body. It is difficult to be in a system for long term without becoming cold and obtuse to the problems around you. So just don't be shocked or surprised. You heard it here first.
And Stephanie, to add on that, I would also add, don't be surprised if leaders of color are not your skin folk. You know what I mean? Or your kinfolk, rather. But
because it was here about the importance of allyship and
exactly.
I won't talk down to that at all. This shit is important, but I just was specifically speaking to the fact that everybody's not going to be on your same. Don't automatically be looking for allies in places that unfortunately they take the allies where they come from.
Plus, let's talk about tokenism. Yeah, there are also people in those positions that like to be tokened. They're happy that it's only been them. And so here you come with all your foolishness. They don't want you. They don't want you. Like, great example, like I always kind of say, anybody that has met me, anybody that has spent time with me, I'm like this. I'm always like, hey sis, come, eat, feed, love, all the things. I'm so happy to see you. I never want it to be just me. Unfortunately, it's not always like that. I have entered spaces where I am just like so excited to do somebody else brown, and it's been a quick, like,
You want to cry. You want to cry. You was looking at your people like, yes, sister and brother in.
And they looking for somebody else.
Matidana. No. Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, but it's real. It's real.
And I think, remember, I'm going to translate it in Creole. It's like midwifery is like walking the line of life and death. And I think if we took it, not to say people on this panel are not taking midwifery seriously, but if you really thought about it, well, there isn't glamour in that. It is understanding I'm trying to keep someone alive. And that's like the minimum. That's, again, you don't get extra credit for that. That's what you have to do, you know? But I think that so many people on this panel understand walking that line of life and death. And I've definitely had people who left midwifery training because they were like, this is too stressful for me. I don't want that level of responsibility. And so I think it's really important, one, just like you're researching where you want to work, research where you want to go to school. Where I went to school, the people who really wanted home birth experience, they had to fight for it, just like birth centers. And, you know, also if you're interested in that, you have to go to an area where that's also available in your training, you know, contraceptive, you know, I think once you start to build your foundation and your colleagues know who you are, one, they're either going to come for you, and that is also stressful, you know, like Ebony said, yes, there are allegations. There are times I haven't even been in the office, or they're like, this patient said something. And I'm like, well, let's go to the encounters. I haven't seen this patient. So please go to the other appropriate Black midwife who is maybe 35 years older than me. And that is who you should have come. Like, real quick, shut it down. And, you know, I'm like, but they know, hey, she's queer. She offers choice, you know, even around Trump and Title 10 and just 9, we've gone around the language, you know, so your colleagues know who you are, and some of them are not here for that. So it is, again, important to know the setting you're going into, but then what are the ways that you provide options for those patients that you consistently have to see? Because that is your midwifery language and style. And that is what you are trying to build and expand on. And yes, there are people that are just haters. That's it. They're trying to take that light out of you, you know, and they have no problem squashing that out. So before that light is extinguished, go to another practice. Like Ebony tells me every day, I don't know why I'm here, but she's like, go. You know, like literally do not let your light extinguish, because then we will potentially lose you from work. And that is like the few steps ahead that I'm trying to be ahead of when I meet a new midwifery student that's Black. I'm like, so we're trying to retain you for a good 20 to 30 years. Think of it like that. They're like, wow, I'm just trying to get through next week. I'm like, so, you know, it is really this buildup so that you have the stamina for that 30 years. Because if we destroy you in training, if we destroy you that first year, you're not going to be here 5 years out.
Till you mess around and have that student loan over your head, and you just got to put up with the bullshit because you got bills to pay. You'll just go on about your job like, I hate this place. I hate all of y'all. And you just do your job because you got bills coming in. Because there, I mean, let's be real. Midwifery training, and I don't care which avenue you go through,
it's expensive.
Facts. Yeah, so don't think that some people are in here for fun and leisure. Some people got student debt above their head and are in need of insurance and to provide for their families as well, you know, so don't sleep on that. And so while you're there trying to pay your bills and trying to get your job, doing work that you love, you know, sometimes you got to put up with some stuff that's not ideal. And that sometimes means functioning in place and space that clearly was not made for you. And sometimes you end up eating a lot of shit.
Can you guys speak to the importance of allies in the hospital and collaborating with them? Like, how do you get the white midwives and the white nurses and the white doctors or the anti-Black staff to support you? Or are they supporting? Or are they creating it? Are they making it more difficult? I mean, I feel like I can answer that myself, but.
I mean, I feel like there's both in every setting, right? There's definitely folks who are wonderful allies, and there's definitely white supremacists all day. But what I will tell you is it is important to have that allyship, because part of the reason why I'm able to still like do some of the most incredible work, like managing these higher acuity patients, I can't manage them alone. I'm collaborating, I'm co-managing. So I have to have relationships with docs, with MFM. It's important. And I can't pretend that like I can just do it all by myself. I can't. So what I usually do is, or what I have done is, I'm just, again, what I do ain't everybody. I'm confrontational. I like to pull people aside and have a discussion. So it's usually what I do. Like, sis, hey, I had a student one time, I was like, hey, come here one second. So you can't call a Black baby a monkey. She was like, I was just saying that the baby was really cute. And I was like, so I'm going to send you to some readings. I'm not going to do this work for you. But it's inappropriate. You know what I'm saying? Like, residents, hey, you over here making fun of this Black woman because she's saying she's Jewish and she can't be possibly Jewish. Hebrew Israelites, it's real. Let me send you to some readings. Like, I just have always just jumped on the scene to address it, to acknowledge it. Hey, you know why she cussed all of y'all out? Because her mama died last week. Stop pressing her out.
Yeah, you gotta
have some peace.
I like that real-time approach, because sometimes a day later, people don't even know what you're talking about. Strike with an iron's heart. I had somebody around here who talked about, you know, the nice colored lady who went and bought the shirt. I was like, you know what, sir? But you end up doing that in the hospital too. People don't know. So you got to, I like your approach right there in real time, because oftentimes they're just so ignorant because it's not anything they've had to seek to find answers to. So I like that.
And we've been seeing this year with the uprisings, you know, a lot of white folks are like, racism exists. There's protests. How do I help? What books
Girl,
do I
not
need
just
to
the white
read?
people, there's Black people. I've been saying that. And I'm sitting here looking like,
it just felt like Instagram was racism 101, all of it. Just
no, at my service, no one acknowledged it. And then a white doctor would send a text to only the providers and was like, can we do the knee thing? And then I didn't respond to anybody. Like, they were like,
say the knee thing?
Yeah, what is it? What, take a knee for Black lives? Can we do that in front of our clinic? And
they were going to kneel.
And they said, or do we not do that kind of thing? And I didn't respond to anybody. And they all were like looking at me to be their ally. And that doctor is married to a Black man and has been crying in the office. Like, and I was like, I have zero tolerance for tears. So I just like people would come in. And I'm just like, no, like what changed for me during that time is I asked every single patient, how are you doing? I checked in specifically around the killings of, you know, everybody, you know, whoever unfortunately was that week, and then spoke, what is your community doing? And how is that impacting like your home dynamic and your pregnancy? Mm-hmm. And so we made space to talk about that. So we were talking about Corona, like it's part of my spiel, Corona. And then the next thing I spoke about that, and I intentionally looked at the person. And I was like, you know, I have my mask on, but I am looking at you, you know? So then we would just talk about it. So yeah, but no, there are other people that were like, can you believe the looters want to take over this country, defunding the police? I mean, all of America's Trump country, but I'm in Southwest Georgia. It is Trump country. Like there is no, you know, denying that. So yeah.
There's been a series of events that have happened on my job. I'm not surprised by them. I'm not going to go into detail because, again, protecting my peace, and I'm dealing with it in the ways that I need to. But it's important to know what space you're in. And when you first get into the hospital space, observe, pay attention, look around you, because the clues are there. And if it's not a clue, it's outright in front of you. Who supports what? And I knew before George Floyd, I knew who would set it off in terms of white supremacy in the hospital system. I know which Black patient isn't necessarily safe with a certain nurse or provider. I know. And so I need you to pay attention. So when these events happened, it's not a shock, but that doesn't take away the sting from it. But then also what is nice is the surprise in allyship. The folks who are like, yo, what do you need right now? I will say when the events surrounding George Floyd happened and things just started to escalate, there was only one individual, provider to provider, who contacted me and was like, hey, like, what do you need? I know times are hard. And I work with Black providers. I work with other Black physicians. I work with other Black midwives. One person, I'm sure we have a group of well over 40 doctors. Our midwife group is about 13, maybe plus. The rest was crickets. And the silence, I had to explain it to somebody and to multiple people, the silence is deafening, but it also lets me know where I stand. So I can't be bothered with you. I need to be about my business. I will, lean on the support that's there in the folks that I know, but I can't sit here with you because there's no room for me here. And let's talk about the word microaggressions. We're well past that. It's aggressions. Like at this point in time, why are you touching my hair? I don't know you. Get your hand on my hair. We're in the hospital. It's COVID. I shouldn't have to explain this to you, but take your hand on my hair. You can look at
COVID, people are touching hair.
People are still touching other Black people's hair. Y'all want me to throw this computer? Because I will this morning. People are still doing, I literally within the past year, I've had to duck and dive because folks are touching my hair.
A reflex of like, I don't want to be, in your neck, in your throat.
It's no longer a microaggression. Why are your hands coming towards me? When you want to observe something and figure it out, I know you're curious. I'm gonna give that to you. Ask the questions. There's no need for you to up in my hair. But I mean, all that to say, let's go back to the allyship. There are folks in the hospital system who want to support you and back you. And some of them don't know exactly how to do it. Again, the observation is key. You need to know who these people are.
I also want to just tag onto what you're saying to say, like, I am notorious as well. Like, remember back in the day, we used to always joke and be like, do white people how they do us? And so like, send them an email, right? Like I'm gonna tell somebody to send an email. So I kind of flip it now and just be like, you are causing me harm. I'm notorious for throwing that one. But like, you are harming me right now. I'm asking me how to fix racism, what to do. You go read some books and you do that work. So I'm also good for like, I spin that back. I am not the answer. I can't help you figure it out. There's tons of stuff for you to figure out and read because they need to be clear. That's the other thing that also happens with situations like this, right? You're getting all types of emails, inboxes. I'm so sorry. I didn't know things were that bad. Whatever. On top of the folks that, I had Black colleagues tell me, like, girl, you gotta stop talking about racism so much. You're always talking about racism. I was like, shit. I'm gonna keep talking about it because it's real. I can try to act like it's not real. It's real. So, the harm, you got to make some good force fields. Like futuristic, we don't say boundaries, force fields. Create some bomb-ass force fields against folks because that's the other.
You're going to be like Hippolyta in Lovecraft Country and just go to another planet.
We have another Zoom call about that. I'd appreciate that. But, that's the other struggle with sometimes our folks trying to become allies, is they want to come to you and ask you, well, tell me how to do it. I can't. You have to do that work.
But the reality too is like, I can't emphasize this enough, but had you surrounded yourself with a mixed variety of people, you would never be surprised nor shocked that these things were still going on in your country. It's just the problem is your circle's like this. You know what I'm saying? All you had to do was expand your horizons. You're going to, you know, surround yourself with people who have a varied experience in their walked existence. And that's going to help you out a lot, because we cannot take on the onus of being your personal anti-racism defender. Listen to Black women when they speak in general conversation, that you never have to be shocked when I start using my hands, because you're going to be like, oh, that's just regular. That's regular. That doesn't mean an attack thing. Nobody.
Well, you can always tell who don't actually have Black friends or Black people in their lives.
Always tell. You can always tell. Like, it's just, you could always tell. And it's just like, you know, expand your horizons, speak around, you know, be around other people. And you're gonna be able to do that on anti-racism work, not only when Black women die in hospitals, not only when George Floyd's are suffocated on the street and people murdered in their own homes and beds. Those won't be the times that just sparks your interest. You're going to learn to walk in an existence of anti-racism, because those are the people that you are surrounded with. You're going to make it that is your walked existence, so that when people say, oh, this nice colored girl, it's gonna make you be the one to step up and be like, sir, whoever, that's not what we do. And so don't put the work on us. Surround yourself by people so you know what the work is, so that you can do the work. That's all.
And even in that too, again, with the observation, remember, some people think that they want to be allies, and that's not really what they want to do. I think it's just kind of like Lodz's workplace, where they're like, can we just take this photo up so that it looks like we're not racist? Because I mean, again, I've had the conversation the last week. I don't see color. Okay. All right. Do you realize you're discrediting me as a Black person when you say that? Well, that's not what I meant. Well, this is what I'm telling you what it is, but that's not what I meant. So the back and forth, you want to understand, but you're really not wanting to understand. What was the other thing? I was explaining to them about Black woman guilt, like, and this is to another midwife. This is a colleague. And I'm like, you know, we have this thing that we carry over ourselves. Like calling off is a big deal, you know? Like I in the years that I've been working, I have never called off of a call shift. I've accidentally missed a call because I thought there was a switch that happened that didn't happen, but I've never called off of a call. I've called off of clinic as needed, but it's like this really, I have this really huge sense of guilt, because the responsibility then goes to somebody else. And then that translates to Ayanna's not doing her job as a Black woman, the perception anyways. And as I try to explain this, a white colleague was like, well, I think as midwives, we all have that guilt. No, ma'am. Specifically, I am saying as a Black woman, I'm taking it on as a different light. Like, I'm trying to explain it to you because you asked me to. So even when Ebony says, let me give you this reading, they gonna read it, and still some of them will still come back and say, but this XYZ. And you know, that's the privilege covering their eyes. So again, observation and
the racism from white midwives is what blew my mind in school. I was not ready. Ready.
Wow.
Not ready.
Sorry, I'm like, really?
I mean, you know, it exists, right?
But to experience it
was another, and then my body was just in shock for like months before I could like, okay, and this is how we need to roll through. Yeah.
It's wild.
I mean, I feel like I just said this recently on another panel. I feel like midwifery for a long time, like they got a pass. They were like, oh, not us. We're not racist.
Yeah.
We're the Mother Earths, you know, beads, magical. We love everybody. Not realizing that we be some of the main culprits causing harm, not only to, you know, patients, but to growing like student you know, new practicing causing
Bullying.
a ton of harm. Thinking that, like, you know, it's all good because I married a Black man, or I got a Black kid, or I got friends that are Black, and of course not. No, no, sis. No.
I also like to remind white midwives the maternal mortality rate for Black and Indigenous women, birthing people, excuse me, increased on your watch. Like, if you want to hold all those leadership positions, right? But then when it's time to do the work, it's like, well, I need to be absolved of it. I'm going to go and read white fragility. I'm going to reach out to Black midwives.
They love that book.
And maybe it'll get better. I also think, as we're having this conversation, I think of like Pat Woffman, Dr. Michelle Drew, who always remind me when they're like, you know, we are glad you're there. But they're also like, you have to remember that, you know, and I do think it is important to remember it. It's not an excuse what I'm about to say, but Black people who survived segregation, Jim Crow, the Deep South, sometimes you will meet people who are just wired differently, and their only goal is to exist. And existing sometimes is not being vocal. And so understanding that sometimes that can cause like tension. If you have like an Ebony who's like, or you have a Lodz who's like, I'm about to talk about this. My voice is gonna raise up because I'm passionate, I'm Haitian, I'm, you know, all the stereotypes, but it's not because I'm coming for you. It's because I am passionate about this issue and I feel like no one's listening, versus another person's like, that's not how you survive. Like, you survive by organizing, being a lot more strategic, going behind all these people, playing these games. And sometimes that's just too much mental gymnastics. But I also have to remember, and my spouse reminds me, like, what are you going to get by being your, you know, Haitian New Yorker self? So your blood pressure is high now, and what happened?
I want to change topics a little with some of the questions in the Q&A box. I asked this because the rift between midwives is a concern to me. As hospital midwives, how does the education and training you have and environment you work affect your collaboration, your attitude, and your support for CPMs and CMs whose practice out of hospital?
We couldn't be in this work without each other. Like, midwifery is the umbrella term. We just have different subsets. Like, and going back, I think Ebony said initially, it's already, for Black midwives, it's already ingrained in us. For many of us, that's ancestral work. Like, remember, they took this away from us. So we were traditional midwives, as the term would be used now, you know, decades ago. That was snatched from us. We were told we needed to be better at what we did, or this is the right way to do it. And so we took on, you know, public health nursing, all that stuff, and some of us went into this certified nurse midwifery, you know, zone. So I can't do my job by myself. Like, I can't do it alone. The work requires other birth workers. And honestly, I don't get the tension between like the CPMs and the CNMs, because honestly, I'll learn sometimes more from a CPM than I would at a CNM. And I have some CPMs who are like, thank you for teaching this XYZ because I didn't know about this, you know? So there has to be kind of a middle ground here. I'm not gonna fight anybody CPM because they're valuable. Now, there's something to be said about vetting each provider individually. Like, you need to know who you're getting into, or who you're getting into practice with. But we all are trying to do the same work here for the most part. So hopefully that answers.
Ayana, I take it one step further, and I do think that CNMs need to be just as vocal for CPMs. Yes, midwifery is the umbrella term, but like when we're passing legislation, like just happened in Georgia, CPMs were left out. And it was, are you gonna advance CNMs or CPMs? And, you know, and then there was another bill where we included everyone. So I think we need to be acknowledgement. We are all in this together. And if we're in together, then our CPM colleagues need to be at tables, need to be throwing tables. And when they're throwing tables, we need to also be listening to them, because they are telling us something's going on. And we can't just say, well, you're out of the hospital, you know, I can't really advocate for you this time, but I got you next time. So yeah. I can understand where the tension comes from.
Well, Pat Laufman did a presentation a couple years ago here in New York, and she said, she started off her presentation where if CPNs were legal in New York, they would be eating C&Ms and CMs for lunch. And the whole room was just like, but there's no, at least for me, who's been trying to study CPM and considering C&M and seeing both sides, there is a clear divide of C&M's kind of gatekeeping midwifery in a ways of, if you want CPMs to be legalized, y'all need to organize yourselves and leave us out of it instead of coming together.
It depends on where you are and where you're practicing. I can see that as the complete dichotomy of the two places where I was. And what I will say in terms of, it doesn't matter where you are, but there is that rift. Now, where I happen to be now, CPMs are the ones that have the upper hands, okay, in this place. So and I have to say, the rift is like it is so fraudulent. It was placed upon us because none of us were ever in need of all of these different certifications and letters. But I just will say, it depends on where you are, where that divides. Same way, CPMs in the state where I reside now could cop for CNMs to provide them the same types of rights. They've done the exact same, harmful anti-legislation against that other states have done to CPMs. You know what I mean? It's just flipped. So just understand where you are. But that type of garbage needs to stop. If we're not passing legislation for CNMs and CPMs across the board, it is a disservice to anyone who utilizes our services as midwives.
I think I'll speak very honestly and tell you that I used to personalize kind of like not understanding the divide. Like, why? I was like, why weren't the Black CPMs fucking with me? I'm here. Like, I want to be with y'all. Why don't y'all want to be with me? I really realized that this shit is so deep and has so much history with it. And I feel like newer, younger midwives are like, nah. Like, there's a lot of reasons, survival reasons or whatever, for why that divide existed and why folks want to perpetuate it. But I will tell you, as I got deeper and more exposed to more CPMs across the country and not just limited to where I was definitely getting a lot of the riff and a lot of the beef. I was like, what? Oh no, we should go together all the time. Like, it shouldn't be a thing of like a home birth CPM is out there and she's like, I got a transfer, sis, what's up? And giving her to me so I can take her to the hospital so she can maintain midwifery care, or vice versa. I got a patient sitting in front of me and be like, oh, you want a home birth? Let me call so-and-so, so-and-so. And, we should be aligned and working together. So what I have done, I will tell you later in my career, like I said, as I've grown, just like Lodz is saying, like, why are they not at the table? So when I'm sitting places and I'm like, y'all are just talking about CNMs, what about CPMs? When I go on the Hill and I'm doing congressional briefings, you have not heard me not one time say all pathways. That includes CPMs. So we need more of us to rally consistently together. It's a very old, dirty secret. And somebody put on there, was it just white midwives? No, Black midwives too. Because it kind of felt like, well, we getting left out. And I get it. I absolutely get it. So we need a lot of work in that area to align.
Because really the fight for CPMs and CNM, the quiet as it's kept, it really is just about legislation and policy. It's really not what's best for people. Because if people were taking that and making it the focus of what's best for people, the political and legislative backtalk wouldn't even be part of the conversation. So that's just, we need to understand what the bottom line is. When we start hearing that type of thing, it just becomes a matter of exclusivity and who is unable to receive those services.
Thank you all. As we're reaching time, I want to close out with an exercise. I want everyone to close your eyes and tell me what your midwifery practice looks like in the future without white supremacy. All those barriers that you think are present or are present are no longer there in our future. What do you see? What do you smell? What do you hear? What do you taste? What do you feel?
Let me know when you're ready, because I taste it and smell it.
Go ahead.
I envision a freestanding birth center in the state of Alabama in a rural area that is run by midwives and serves the rural birthing community that has like-minded physicians who are willing to stand behind the safety and power and importance of Black birth center run Black birth centers and birth center births. And I foresee positive relationships with facilitated with transfers, facilities that we have to transfer to that provide respectful transition of care from those in the birth center and home birth world into the hospital environment. And I see people learning how to work together in whatever systems they decide to labor and birth in. I don't think I'm that far off, because what we about to do.
That sounds beautiful.
I'm
going to be at that birth center, just let you know, Stephanie.
I just add to, like, even to broaden that even more, like, I just want every Black woman, no matter her socioeconomic status, to birth wherever she wants to, whether it be home, birth center, or hospital, to have a Black midwife and to function in a healthcare system that is culturally aware, not sensitive, aware, goddammit. I want all the things. I want them to understand all the things. And I also want our policies to reflect that. I want the government to regulate insurance companies like they try to regulate my uterus and give us appropriate reimbursement, this high touch, high quality care.
Affordable malpractice insurance.
Yes. Yes. And I want there to be not only more Black midwives, more Black MFMs, more Black docs for us to collaborate with, more Black social workers, more Black everything, to create more spaces where we're not getting harmed.
And that's what I saw, Ebony. I just saw a place that was safe and a place where people didn't have to choose what was more important, their Blackness, their queerness, their this, their that, but that my whole being can come and be safe and know that I'd be taken care of, that I'd be appreciated, that I'd be listened to, and just be shepherded during this transition. And it can be anywhere. You have the choice, home, birth center, hospital, and that you're working with safe partners. And by partners, I mean those OBGYN and MFMs, but that you understand that this person's like, I'm gonna get quality care no matter who I see, and that I don't have to be at a table where maybe one or two people are like, so I'm gonna mentor you, and then there'll be 3 leaders. I want to text all my colleagues and be like, so did you hear about this fellowship too? You applying, you got it? Okay, let's see how many of us are gonna get it. That is the future. And that's just where I wanna be. And selfishly, I miss taking care of my people. I miss taking care of Haitian people. That, I mean, I love being in the South. I miss some Creole, man. So yeah.
For me, the energy is right. Like, the deeper I get in this, the more connection I'm getting back and forth with people. And instead of continuously pouring out with this little reserve, I see a time where we as midwives are filled constantly. And that light is like transcending out in our work because we're filled, and we're filled not only from each other, because that's key. We're filled by each other, but by our patients. And our patients, I think they do that now. Like honestly, a lot of times the reason why I'm maintaining is because a patient has poured into me, or a few of them have, and we've laughed and we chuckled in the office. But we need more of that, and a place where these Black moms aren't having to say on their birth plan, please don't kill me. Like that's the bottom line. Like they'll know that they're safe here, and we're doing everything possible to get them through this experience. Also, since we just talked about it too, the CNM, CPM, like there's no clear division. It's this unified, not a gray zone, but we are all together in the work, helping each other, no fighting back and forth. Like we just know we're about our business, you know? And the thing that came to me too was peace, like just not amongst ourselves, but peace within ourselves too. So that's what the future of, and being radical, because I just feel, in order to get to these things, our future midwives and our student midwives, they're already doing it. And I'm so proud of the folks who are in the work now, but they're being radical in their midwifery in order to make these changes. And so that level of being radical is translating to how our future is going to end up. So that's where I hope to see us all.
And so it will be. Thank you all for joining us today. This has been beautiful. I hope we can do more of these in the future, and that this becomes a norm, because even as a student, I'm being fed off of this so much on how to enter this space. And I look up to all of you as my mentors, and hopefully one day as my preceptors or second midwives. Yes. Enjoy the rest of your day and be well.
Thank you.
Bye, beautiful people.
Bye.
Great to see you guys.